Hi everyone, James Foster here. This is another episode of Bruxer TV, your daily MMA news show. First things first today, John Jones called Gegard Mousasi the toughest fighter to come out of Strikeforce. And that is absolutely hard to deny. Gegard has a 33-3 career stats rap sheet, if you will. He's lost one fight in the last 6 years, and that was to King Mo. The only other possible little glint on his record would be his draw match that he had with Keith Jardine. And other than that, 6 years, no losses. He is by far an amazing fighter. But now, is John Jones just being really nice to Gegard? Or is this also a little slap to Daniel Cormier, who's been calling out John Jones, and John Jones has been waiting for him to drop the weight and actually come and fight him? Is this a little jab saying that maybe Cormier doesn't have this stuff to fight him yet? I don't know. We'll see as things go on. But it's a little interesting that this would be the timing that John Jones would be bringing up Gegard. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this. I very much think that this will become a bigger deal upcoming. So we'll wait and see. Next up, Dana White talks about Rampage, and he calls him, and I quote, "There's no doubt he's an MMA icon." And that is absolutely true. You can't argue with that. When Rampage was in his prime, the man was an amazing fighter. There was no one else much funner to watch. And with his all but imminent departure from the UFC now, Dana White keeps saying he needs to find people who will make him happy. He doesn't really think that'll be Bellator, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But Dana's kind of nicely saying, "Get out of here." I mean, let's be honest. Rampage is tired of the UFC. They've had all their problems with the sponsors, with the fight, with Rampage saying that the UFC is just cashing in on him, even though the UFC's bought him apparently several cars, as well as the $15.2 million that he's made fighting for the UFC. So Dana White seems like he's very nicely, but a little tired of Rampage. So if Rampage is gonna fade off, I think Dana White's just gonna let him. Although he does, and by he I mean Dana White, reserves the right to be able to match any offer that Rampage is offered in the future from any other kind of fight promotion. So that's an interesting little clause in his contract that could potentially keep Rampage in the UFC, although it doesn't sound like either party is really interested in that. Here's a little fun fact for you. Last year, there was nearly a Brock Lesnar versus Fedor Emelianenko fight. I would have loved to have seen that. Unfortunately, the deal died on the table. Yet it would have brought Brock out of retirement to fight Fedor, but Fedor's father died right around that same time, and shortly thereafter, Fedor just hung up his gloves and retired from fighting altogether. And unfortunately, you've probably also seen that with the recurrence of this idea that Brock could be coming back, that's also not going to happen. Brock has recently just signed another 2-year extension with the WWE to stay in the squared circle instead of coming to the octagon. So 2015 would be the earliest we would see Brock back. Personally, I don't miss the guy. I never thought he was that great of a fighter. He was just big. So, if he doesn't come back, that's fine by me. But I have to admit, a fight between Fedor and Brock would have been epic. I would have loved to have seen that because I wanted to see Fedor knock his ass out. That would have been a good fight. Next up, there's been new delays in the Eddie Alvarez situation. There's been delays in the legal battle. And it's becoming very apparent to fighters that they need to be very, very cautious when dealing with Bellator. Sin City Fight boss Dana White has been saying that Bellator people, Viacom, who owns them, are boxing people. They're boxing promoters generally. And these kind of delay tactics are very common in the boxing world, where, as Dana White says, they're in court with a lawsuit every 15 minutes. So this is probably going to be a very lengthy process. We're not going to have Eddie in the UFC anytime soon. I think it's really going to come out to it's going to wind up being a year if it happens the way I think it will, where Eddie's going to essentially just wind up waiting out his contract, and he's not going to fight anyone. Bellator is tying things up. Eddie doesn't want to fight for him anyway. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't see him coming over in the next year, but you never know. We'll see what happens. Last but not least, over the weekend, Anderson Silva's manager has been talking about possible fights for the Spider. The Spider has said that he wants to fight someone with a name fans would know, and the name that has come up is Cung Lee, of all people. I don't know if this is just because he was in that Reza movie that Quentin Tarantino presented. Everyone calls it a Quentin Tarantino movie, although he just presented it. Actually, the Reza actually directed it. Not that good of a movie. Cung Lee was fine, don't get me wrong. Besides being a decent fighter, Cung Lee was fairly decent in that movie as well. But to be a contender for the Spider, I don't see it. I do not see him being the top contender right now. Although Cung Lee did come out today and say that he would absolutely fight the Spider. So, I don't see it happening. Dana White has also said that Cung Lee's not one of the top competitors. And even though the world of the 185 weight class is very murky right now, though we don't really know who the top competitor is being, Dana White referred to it as typical Silva camp nonsense. Apparently, before most fights, as we've seen, the Silva camp likes to throw out random names like Cung Lee, who will just never get the fight. So don't expect to see the Cung Lee Anderson Silva fight. But hopefully we'll be seeing Anderson fight summertime, this coming summer, to defend his title. Alright, that is all we have for today, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm James Foster, this is Bruxer TV, and I will see you tomorrow.